We're jumping right into it here this morning. I already have the upper cowl on, ground down all the welds, and inside, you can't really see in there, but everything seam sealed on the top hats. Cowl panels lined up, and I was moving on to shock tower assemblies. I prepped them in all the areas. I put the holes in the spots where I'm going to be filling with welds, and on the back side where it meets the firewall. And I was just setting them up in place to see how they're going to fit. A lot of times I've had issues with the passenger side, having to trim the apron a little bit. You can see where I sharpied there. It needs to be trimmed a little bit to fit underneath the lip of that cowl. And usually fitting the curvature of the firewall down here, it's a little bit off. I always end up having to bend that. You can see my Sharpie mark there. Bend that lip a little bit more, and then I can always bend it back once I get it in there, but it's not allowing me to push the apron panel back into the firewall the whole way. You can see to the toe board there where the frame rail is. I got about like 1.5 inches or 1 inch gap, and that's about what the gap is there along the firewall. So need to trim both of those spots, bend it, and then I should be able to bring the whole assembly back. But I just set that up in place first just to make sure that it's going to fit. Trim what I got to. This side is nice, fits underneath like it should, fits the curvature real good. I just have to draw it back that last little bit. It's about 1/2 inch or so, 1/4 inch. And for that, I use a ratchet strap, which if you've seen my other videos of doing front ends, I just usually will attach a ratchet strap to where the lower control arm's going, go back to the transmission cross member or a point where I can ratchet strap together, and it'll pull that whole apron assembly back in place. So I'll show that a little bit of how I do that whenever I get to it. But for now, I got to take that one back off, trim those spots a little bit, and then I'll get it back in place, and then I'll start ratcheting them. And then I got to prep the radiator support so I can set that in place, and that'll get everything to where it needs to be, and then I can start lining everything up. So just real quick, just to show you what I mean by ratchet strapping, to bring that apron panel back, you can see the gap I got in between the firewall and the rear apron there. So I'm just attaching a ratchet strap. I'm hooking it onto the trans cross member brace and onto actually where the lower control arm bolt is going. And what I'm doing is just cranking that, and you'll be able to watch it. Just go back until it touches here. If I could do it with one hand. Let's do one more click. I can see it's touching at the top. It veers out a little bit there, but that's just the firewall. Just needs drawn in. That's why I use self-tapping screws from the outside. I'll drill a hole in there eventually. Run the self-tapping screw through that to bring both panels together. But you can see how it brought that whole assembly back, and it met it to the floor pan the way it should. You can see the whole way around where it meets the toe board. Everything's drawn tight now. So that's the way I found easiest, because you could sit there and push on it all you want, it wouldn't come back, but as soon as you do that, it forces it and moves things where they need to be. So I'm going to do it to this side because it's got a gap there about the same as what the other side is now. I trimmed up those spots so it fits underneath. I'll put a ratchet strap on that side, draw that back, and then I'm going to set the radiator support in place to start working on all my measurements, because setting that there, it's pulling it back, but it's also probably pulling it back and getting this apron panel to start tilting. So the rail is probably pointing a little bit to the passenger side. So what I'll do is set that radiator support in place, and then I'll check all my measurements. I have points from the rail to rockers, the heights, which is what those rails are at, the height of what I need that rail to be. And I have measurements from the floor supports down. I have different measurements. I have measurements from the edge of the cowl out to where all of these fender holes are supposed to be. So that gives me an idea if I have that panel back far enough. And I need to check cross measurements, so I got to put that radiator support in place so I can check measurements across holes, from the cowl panel out to other side holes. Everything that'll tell me if, say, this apron assembly is tilted outward. That would throw off my measurement that I have of what it should be from, say, this hole here to that corner of the cowl. That's mostly what points I'm measuring from. That's one of my big spots that I use, from corners of the cowl. So I'll use the same measurements. They may differ, but from that cowl corner out to this hole, and that will tell me if this one's a little bit crooked. So you're just making everything work together to get every piece where it should be on your measurements. And that's what I'll be checking here. And it takes a while to get everything lined up with these front ends. But hopefully by the end of the day, everything will be lined up, screwed together, and maybe start welding it. And also I use an export brace to tie the cowl holes to the shock tower tops, and that helps line it up also. So once I draw all these together, put that radiator support on, I'll loosely put that export brace in place, and then I'll start doing my measurements. Alright, so I'm at the point where I got the entire front end lined up. Everything's measured out to where it's supposed to be. I was priming door hinge plates, and the door hinges are on the other side. I rebuilt them a while back. Just put primer in the inside and outside of that A-pillar where it's going to get sandwiched, so there's some paint in between it at least on top of that weld through. But I just have everything screwed in place. I use self-tapping screws, which you can see a couple of them. I put them in the spots where I need to draw the panels together, in between, that keeps it tight itself. Self-tapper there, one on each corner, and on this side you can see there's a couple in there. But everything lined up really nice. I got all my measurements where they're supposed to be. The heights of the rail to the floor, height of the floor support to the floor. Let's see, measurements from the cowl corner out to fender holes, to the front of the radiator support, both sides. Cross measurements from cowl side out to different fender holes. They're all the same. Just lots of different spots to measure off of. My recommendation is just to measure your car before you cut it apart. As long as your car's not twisted, those measurements should be what you need to go for when you put your car back together. And also I put the export brace in and bolt that tight, so it helps hold everything in place and line everything up. I need to get the rear apron extensions. That was one piece that I forgot to get. I thought I had them with these aprons, but I must have used them for a different car since I had these aprons for a while. So, and then there's a couple spots in here. You can see self-tappers there that draw that toe board area tight. So basically the next thing is to weld that. I want to put the rear apron extensions on first, just to double check those and the heights of that back of the apron, and then everything will get welded. Once I weld everything, I'll grind all those welds down, and then I'll put the torque boxes in. And they're a 2-piece from Dynacorn. That'll be the order that I'll do this front end. After that, I'll grind those welds down, and the entire front end structure will be done. I gotta put in the strut rod brackets. Those are real quick, but I'll do that last. And then it'll be hanging the doors. And then after hanging the doors and lining it up to the door posts and on the rocker, then it'll be on to hanging the full quarters, taillight panel, trunk corners, and getting everything back in the back end lined up. So it's moving pretty quickly, and just like I hoped it would. Everything fits real nice, other than just the little bit of trimming that you've seen in this video for that passenger side rear apron, how it fits to the firewall, which we got that taken care of. Just some things just need a little bit of tweaking to make it fit the best. And some panels, you could get another apron and it can fit better. You could get another one that fits worse. It just sometimes just seems a little bit different. But overall, real nice quality. Everything lines up. All my measurements are right. So I'm pretty happy with this. That's going to be it for this video. Just lining up the front end. Be back on it a little bit tomorrow. I'm going to pick up the rest of the parts that I needed. I need a lot of hardware. I don't have door hinge bolts, those apron extensions, and a couple other things that I'll need along the way. Different hardware, fender hardware and whatnot, even though that's not going to be for a little bit. I just want to make sure I have it, so if it's out of stock, I can get it in time, so I'm not waiting on anything. So thanks for watching the video. Hopefully I'll have another one up tomorrow. If not, probably be back on Monday. And should be back on the 69 next week to finish that one up. So we'll see you in the next video, and thanks again for watching this one.